Welcome back, everybody. It seems like it's been forever since I did one of these live. It's been a very, very busy time since IT Nation, which was great, by the way. Thanks for all of the people that I got to see. It's been kind of an interesting year, but was really great to see all of the different people at IT Nation. And hey, looking forward to doing it again next year. Speaking of events, probably going to do a live stream here in the next week or two. I hope. I've got to get the gang together that originally talked about doing a live stream on not only how the events went this year, but kind of what the events are going to look like for 2024 and what they hope they're going to look like for 2024. So, of course, when I start these live streams, I do like to make sure that we are on all of the different channels. So let me just really quick here, see if I can get everything fired up and make sure that we are working. All right, so LinkedIn is working. That's good. Facebook is working. And YouTube is working. But I should probably mute myself on YouTube. Well, that's the fastest that's ever happened. So let's see, what can we talk about now? We can talk about the fact that one of the goals for this year for all things MSP was to grow to a point where we could do more stuff. And hey, we did IT Nation. We've actually got some sponsors now. So hopefully what you're going to be seeing over the next several months now is more content that is more curated. So we're going to be doing some very intentional educational content that's not just a podcast or a live stream. They're going to be more webinar and workshop type of events so that we're actually adding more value to the community, which is, at the end of the day, this is what I wanted all things MSP to be about, was to be about the community and giving everybody the resources that they need, whether it's educational content, whether it's just connecting the right vendors to the right MSPs, or connecting two MSPs or three MSPs so that they can talk about the challenges that they're having in their business and be able to work through some of those challenges together. And, you know, one of the things that I think is great about this channel is that, yes, MSPs can come together. And one of the key moments in my MSP was when I started going to events, because that's when I started to network with other MSPs who, believe it or not, had the exact same problems that I was having. And some of them had already solved them. So it was great to get into those environments where I could actually talk to people who had been where I was and needed to get out of, and had the, you know, the reasons, the ideas, and all of the tools to be able to get their business to that next level. And I was able to take advantage of that. And vendors kind of do the same thing in this industry, not only for each other, which they do. I just had a conversation with Al Alper today from CyberGuard 360, and we were talking about how this industry is so different in that everybody just wants to help each other. And I thought about it a little bit later, and I think it's because we serve this small to medium-sized business community. And because there are so many small to medium-sized businesses out there, there's just enough clients for everybody. There's not this scarcity that happens with a lot of other businesses. And so it's really, really interesting how all of this just comes together and how the community makes such a difference in, you know, how this culture kind of has developed. So I said all of that, yeah, to pretty much waste 4 minutes, which I accomplished. Couple of people here already. Degley is here. Degley is a regular here on the live stream. We've actually had him as a guest. So welcome, Degley. And if you are here and watching, which let's see, where's my number at? Yeah, for some reason it's not working. Anyway, oh, okay, there's the number. Yep, we got a couple of people watching, which is great. You know, these are just meant to be fun. Tom Wyant in the house. Hey, Tom. There's hopefully going to be a lot of people on here. This is going to be probably one of the more fun shows of the year because tonight I have a pair of guests that I know pretty well, known them for years, and really, uh, I think, we've got some pretty good power couples in this channel. You've got um, Jay and Michelle McBain, and you've got Carrie and Ian Richardson. And I think that this couple is the next power couple in this channel. Let me introduce them. And I can see them laughing off of screen. So this is going to be a fun episode. Trevor, Des, welcome to the show.
Wait. You didn't tell me she was going to be here.
I'm pretty sure everybody was on the emails that I didn't send.
It was
Fair.
I just imagine our first kind of date where like, hey Trevor, do you think we're gonna be a power couple in technology? What?
In the MSP space where we're like, we don't even know what that acronym means.
What
Acronyms
is
are hard enough
what is
as it is.
what's MSP? For the first year that I worked at Passportal, what's this acronym? Like Dan Wensley's like 47 acronyms or whatever you need to know posts. I still pull that up constantly with MSPs or vendors who are like, what, like there's so many acronyms I don't understand. I'm like, I got a blog for you. I got a blog for you.
I should know
So,
that by now, right? What an MSP is,
yeah, you should
right? I
probably at
should.
this point,
Okay.
as the VP of sales for a vendor company in this channel, you should probably know what that one means.
This is
I'm
when you
gonna hop on
realize that
Google.
imposter syndrome, sorry, Trevor. This is when you realize syndrome for Trevor isn't real. He just doesn't know.
She's not wrong.
Oh, so you guys, obviously, you guys have kind of really adopted this, and I think the channel has adopted you guys as well. Des, you and I met. You were still at Passportal. I don't even remember what year this was. Um, it was it
It was 1 week after the buy-in. So it was probably a secret we might have known, but didn't, I mean, we never knew, but
right,
we knew
right. You
kind
knew,
of,
I knew, but we didn't know that each other knew because we worked at different companies, right?
yeah, exactly.
And it was pre-COVID, and it was Chicago. Oh, Lori Tishnai's event. That's what it was. It was IT Owners Compass in Chicago.
It was an awesome event.
Yep.
And in that event, it was the first time that I'd been coached by the people, I'd been coached by people like at the time, Colin Knox, Dan Wensley. I'd been coached by Christine Gaspin that getting involved in the community was a very important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when you and I started chatting and we are talking about CompTIA, and you were the first person to nominate me to be on a community. I always confuse the two.
I think
Apologize.
they were communities back then. They are committees now.
There we go. So you were the one who coached me that I should be and invited me, put me up for participating in that. And that was my first. So that's my first CompTIA introduction as well. And then I spent about 3 weeks after working for SolarWinds Passportal before I got the lovely, amazing opportunity to work for Dado on the biz dev team under Rob and Mike Palma and Eric Torres and on that team, which was super cool. And so I've been in the channel for, I guess, 8 or 9 years now. It's been a lot of fun. It is. I was just
Mhm.
saying, I was on another panel earlier today, and I talk to MSPs and vendors more than I talk to my friends. And if I'm
What
traveling
friends?
from work, more than I talk to Trevor.
Yeah. Well, that's typically the way it goes. It's the way it goes in our house because we're so busy when we're on the road that there just isn't a lot of time to call home. And the nice thing is you guys get it, right? Because you're both working in this space. I'm very fortunate that Amy is very forgiving and very understanding as well of this space, even though she's not directly involved in it. So you and I got to work for, together at the same company for a hot half a minute. Like Solar Winds, was just a blur back then. But Trevor, you and I'm trying to think of the first time we actually got to meet face to face.
Was it DattoCon?
I think it
Uh,
was.
I think that must have been it, right? Because I was working, I just moved over to Zen Contract. I think that's when it was.
It
I
was.
and almost certainly there was 1 or 20 occasions where you and Desiree were on a webinar or video chat where I would poke my head in, right?
Yep.
Right.
Oh, I
But
knew
yeah,
who
that
you were long before I met you. In fact, I now remember it was that DattoCon, and you'll have to remind me because I don't remember if I came up to you dressed as George Washington or not to introduce myself.
so in I think we'll kind of unpack this more as we go, but DattoCon was one of the weirdest events that I've ever been to in the sense of one of my first B2B jobs, let's go back I think 12 years. I went to a lot of events and I held my own ground because everyone knew me. Now go to DattoCon, right, of 2021 or whatever year it was, 2022, and people are coming up to me and going, "Hey, Trevor," and I'm like, "I have no idea who you are, none." And they're like, "Oh, well, you're Desiree's husband," and I'm like, "Well, okay, this is true. That doesn't change the fact that I don't know who you are."
Yep.
So, and then it's trying to keep this blur of, 300 people who are like, "Oh, you're Desiree's husband." I'm like, actually, I'm my own person. But, I guess for all, you're not wrong, but still, I am my own person. This is kind of degrading. It's starting to hit my ego, which is already very fragile.
Fair. To be fair, at least people knew that your first name was Trevor and not that you were just Desiree's husband. Because I
I,
do think that is like a powerful differentiator. There we go. Slur of words a little bit between the idea that if I had just talked about you as my husband the entire time, the branding and the value would not have been there. And I just think that's an important thing to bring out is that
yeah,
sometimes when we talk about people around us, we might talk about our friend or our partner or our whatever, however you want to go further in that conversation. But we forget that if we give them an individual persona and then we talk about them and we invite them into conversations, they now have a who they are and people go up to them and be like, "Oh, wait, I know you because of everything that was talked about you." And that can
Mm-hmm.
really help with careers and relationships.
yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, except for I'm not going to name names, but I am going to share this recording with her after the fact. And I know if you're watching this right now, you know who you are, who refuses to call me Trevor and just calls me Dez's husband.
I know exactly what you're
And
talking about, and they
you know
solely
exactly who
okay.
I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do, but that is also okay because you don't earn her spot in her life, in her brain, until you earn it. So just because I gave you that value to her specifically, you have to earn it, and I respect that 100%.
Wait, are you telling me that breakdancing at IT Nation didn't earn me my own reputation?
I think that went viral.
I think it went viral too.
I
And I don't know
bullied him
how I
into
missed
doing
that.
that. I bullied him into doing it. Like I literally bullied him. I don't usually bully people, but I like got other people involved and was like, if you guys all talk about it, he'll do it eventually. Like if we get enough people talking about this, Trevor will rip his arms and wrists and hole up on the cement doing spins.
And she did, and so we're like at the circle there, and I specifically remember Alex from OIT VoIP standing there, and Desiree going over, and Alex is looking at me, and Desiree's like making a bit of a commotion, and she goes over and she's like, "Trevor breakdances, get him to breakdance, just bully him into it." And Alex came over and was like, "Come on, do it, don't be a baby." And then yeah. I paid the price for that with like ripped up elbows and wrists and knees and ankles for a good 2 weeks. I'm healed now, I think.
That must have been before I actually went out there and was being the traffic cop to put vendors to one side and MSPs and partners to the other, right there in front of the
It was either before or after.
yeah.
It's a little bit hazy because it was such a busy night, and only for that reason because it was a busy
Only for
night.
that reason.
Just put my that was not early in the night because I cannot bully Trevor into breakdancing early in the night. That has to be after like at least 1/3 more vodkas. And then so that was like the end. I think they were finishing their last three songs
Yeah,
Okay.
before I could convince that to happen.
So
yes.
it
He
was
is a grown up. Fine.
Ish.
all right. So yeah, we didn't do this show to pick on Trevor. Um Not
Sure
intentionally
you
anyway.
didn't. Yeah, oh sure. I'm sure there wasn't an email chain in the background going, oh, we're gonna do these things.
Although you did decide to wear an ugly Christmas sweater.
And of a terrible hockey team. They're my team, but they are just terrible.
Well, the only hockey team I think I've seen in recent memory is Ottawa. So
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, okay. Well, I feel a bit better. I don't know how they're doing this year though.
I don't keep track. It's only because I spent a significant amount of time in Ottawa, for a couple of years.
Home base, yep.
Yep. So I really wanted to cover a couple of different topics tonight. Uh, Wanted to talk about how you guys actually got into this channel. What for people who were not in this, did not grow up in this like I did, how did you stumble upon this channel, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, that's you first, Desiree.
I was gonna say I think this starts with me. And I'm going to start, but I also think there's a really important part to put in here is I've done a lot of these interviews and conversations with other people who have are worked their way into the channel. And a lot of it starts with a I fell into it. So I think
Hmm.
that's a really important thing to highlight is because I fell into it is an actual thing. It's either, like you said, you grew up in it, your parents were in it, or something along the lines. But I swear that I spent the first give or take 6 months of my job. Don't tell Colin or John Wensley, please. But of being like, what? I still don't understand what the channel is, but I'm doing a good job and they still like me, so we're great. But at the time, we are in Calgary, Alberta. So oil and gas, Calgary, Alberta, means that you are probably going to get into oil and gas and then realize your job is going to be gone every 4 years or so. So, but that just is like the way industry and business is run. But there's so much money to be made that you're like, this is a great career. I want to do this. So I spent most of my 20s backpacking and traveling. And then when I got home, I realized I probably should get a grown-up job. Weird. So weird. And then I worked in as a travel agent for about 5 years, which is where Trevor and I met. I'll let him on that story, but we were a travel agent for about 5 years, and that was fantastic until I realized like oil and gas, it's a crashing business industry. And I was like, I can't be a travel agent forever where they keep cutting my commissions. I'm not making any money. I'm working double the hours I should be. And also
Hmm.
my attention to detail isn't great. So I accidentally sent people to the wrong country like twice. Neither they here or there. Another story. But then all of a sudden, one day, someone I knew was at a job at Passporto, and it was really cool. And I'm gonna try to keep this as short as possible, but it was a really cool moment because we were at the time living with Trevor's mom, and we were saving money for a house. And shoot me in the head, that was like a lot, and I love her so much, but like that was a lot. And so I'd already switched jobs 3 times in a year, and you're saving money for a house, so you shouldn't switch jobs again. And then I decided randomly to go into an interview with Dan Wensley. And in that interview, Trevor was like, "Do not go." And I was like, "I don't care. It'll be fine." And I wore jeans and a t-shirt. back then, which was not serious. I did do all of the things that you're supposed to do for an interview. I didn't do any of them. And then in that interview, Dan said to me, there's only a handful of people you need to know in this industry, and I'll guarantee yourself a job moving forward. And I took that really seriously. And then he spent 90 minutes interviewing me, and he didn't ask me for one interview question. And at the end of it, he's like, "What do I need to do to get you to move here?" So I looked at my coaches at the time and I said, "My network, can you please look at what the channel is? Look at Colin Knox, look at Dan Wensley, and look at the channel and tell me if this is a viable option for a career or if this is another one of those like jobs you get where you realize you are now doing door-to-door marketing or in
It's an
sales."
ML. You're in the new MLM, and
It's
you're
an
like,
MLM.
hey, we also have these Cutco knives too, and this Tupperware. It will not break. It broke. It will not break.
I definitely sold both of those things before,
I know
so
you
that
did.
explains a lot.
That's the joke.
Didn't we all? I mean,
I know. I didn't
Car
want to do that
car
again.
stereos.
I had a great job at the time. Like I loved my career. I was working at Shaw, which is a great company here in Canada. Everything was exciting, but that one moment and that one choice that I made to ask the question and then to do the interview, even though I like really should have been more serious about it. And meeting Dan, I tell him all the time that he changed the course of my entire career and life.
Mhm.
And that's how I got into the channel. And then from there, I took Dan's advice of being like, there's only the channel is quite small. And if people like you and you put yourself out there and build relationships, it'll give you the opportunity to find other positions. And so when Passport was sold, Rob approached me and was like, "Hey, do you want to come work with me?" And then when Dado sold, I got approached again for Data Stream. Larry approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to move there?" Maybe not the best option. Layoffs happen, but layoffs happen all
Hindsight.
the time.
yeah,
But it's been a great adventure ever since. And I can honestly say that my everyday life in the channel and everything we do, I wouldn't look back. And I'm so excited for what's moving forward. And I coach people on this story all the time because I think it's very, very important to understand that it it isn't a job that you necessarily look for, but it's a career that you will love.
right, right. Now, Trevor, I guess the question that I would have for you is, did you see all of this fun that Des was having and decide that, hey, that's something that I'd like to be a part of? Or did you have a kind of a different path into falling into it?
No, I think it's very much by way of Desiree getting into it. And I think, early on when she was at Passportal and going, I don't know what password management is, it got me a bit more involved. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Desiree. I'm not trying to play down your experience or anything, but um, by way of her being like, this isn't my area of expertise, right? I was working at a software company, a small startup in Calgary. I'm fairly technical, and so I get some of this stuff. And even then, like Passportal was way over my head, and so was the channel. But she was getting into it, going to these events and talking about, you only do need to know a couple people in here, and then like listening to the things that were going on in the channel, and I'm like, it seems very incestuous, where you can kind of make lateral movements, or you can get a foot up into a new company just by who you know and by the things you're doing. And there's a lot of room for advancement. So I think probably 2 years in, I was working at the software company and was making good money, but I didn't love the trajectory of the company and some of the business practices. I'm like, how much do I expose here? But also, they'll never watch this, so we're probably fine. And I think it was at that point that she was trying to get me into the channel. And I looked at it and I'm like, it's interesting. I'm not sure how much I want to work side by side with you, and mostly not work side by side, but hey, you're building this brand. I don't want to come in and A, piggyback off it, or B, um, try to like take your thunder or impede on this space that you've created for yourself, right? So that was pre-pandemic. During the pandemic, I left the software company I was at and went back to school for software development. after that, I did some kind of like side gig stuff, and Desiree's like, "Hey, there's this MSP I know, and they're looking to kind of outsource and get some contract work for a salesperson, Mr. Tim Golden, love him." So I worked with him for a bit, and that kind of gave me a taste of it, a taste of the channel, right? Where it's like, or the MSP space, anyways, right? The channel I was not intimate with, but familiar with,
Right.
and now I'm understanding the MSP side of things, right? And worked with him for a bit, and then there was an opportunity that arose at Datto, and I was like, Desiree was still there at the time, right? So now I am piggybacking off of her, right? Now I'm totally riding her coattails. I got the job just through pure nepotism. Uh, didn't do anything for
I'm gonna
I did
stop you here. I'm gonna stop you 1 second. And if you think who's your direct boss? It was
where
at Datto.
Barry
As I'm like, I don't know why I'm
B-
doing this thing, Perry.
BH.
It's helping
It's
you
because your
think.
hair's so wet. It's gonna
And
fall out if I
Irvish
don't do this.
and Irvish interviewed you, right?
Yep.
So you think that I can influence Barry and Irvish? Oh, come on. Those are the two most like they have their opinions and their mindset, and especially Irvish, they are based on if they think you're gonna close, you're on. The only part that I would have said that I got you ahead there is because it was a right place, right time. Because six
Yeah.
months before, Data wasn't hiring remote. They would
Sure.
not. This is where like me getting a job at Passportal was such a influential thing because even now, especially, well, Kaseya doesn't hire remote, but Datto at the time, 6 months before, no remote staff. And there
Mhm.
was that 1 year window where all of a sudden they realized that like hiring remote staff in the virtual world we're in was actually a viable option. And that's where you came in. And so I'm going to put, I didn't have any influence over Barry or Irvish at all.
Yeah.
Irvish will never
No,
tell
no,
me, never do anything I do.
no. That's totally fair. And there is also that. What is the test that we had to take to get in there? CSAT or something like that. It's like, have you done one of these, Eric? A
No, I don't think
CSAT?
so.
I'll send you a test one. They're logic and reasoning and math
Oh, okay. Yep.
tests, and they're timed. They're fairly intense, and you have to hit a certain threshold. Otherwise, that's it, right? So that was kind of my foray into like the pure channel. I guess how I got to where I am with Zen Contract today, though, is leading up to working with Datto, I was talking with Greg Sharp. And again, through introduction from Desraie, through the pandemic, uh, they had become friends at, what was it, the San Diego DattoCon?
Oh, that was a
Yeah,
fun one.
No, before we went white water rafting in Denver first, and
that's
Greg
right.
fell out.
No way, he would never. So they had become friends, and then through the pandemic, there was the sense of not just the channel, but community in general, where people check in on them. So we'd have periodic video calls, and Greg and I were talking, and he's trying to define a role that not was a fit for me, but define a role that he could fill. And we were talking, and there was discussions of me coming on board, and then I took the thing with Datto, and then fast forward a year, and there was this defined role for sales and building out the go to market and all of that stuff. And that kind of shores us up to today.
Awesome. Well, I know
Yeah.
that the channel is better for you guys being here, and I do appreciate both of you. Um, I know Des, I have, through CompTIA and stuff, I've had a lot more opportunity to work with you. But, Trevor and I did just do a podcast with Justin just a couple of weeks ago. So you can go check that out if you want to know more, especially if you want to know more about Trevor and Zen Contract. Now, so we've covered, kind of the history, which you guys got into. Um, One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is where you guys think the channel is going in 2024, because we're a fast moving place. I mean, we really are. There's a lot going on here. And you guys have come into this really at a time when we've been moving the fastest, I
Hmm.
think. So, what is your guys' perception of, and I don't even know where to start here because there's so many things. We've got security going on. We've got business practices. We've got maturity of the space happening. So kind of, I guess I'll let you guys pick of what you think is really going to be of material relevance in terms of change in the next 12 months.
So excited. This is like one of my favorite topics right now that's happening because I think there's a really powerful conversation that's happening right now. And I don't know if it'll end up anywhere, but based on the conversation happening, I think it might and will. And I think if it does, it's going to be really cool. But this is in regards to the vendor space and the products available to MSPs that can solve problems that they might not even know that it solves a problem, that it was a problem that can be solved, or it's not even a conversation they're having in the first place. Um, so and and literally I have this conversation like 3 times a week at minimum, more than that. And it's really interesting because I think there's a bunch of vendors that are also working on trying to solve this in a different way. But the vendor space and the MSP space has created this pay to play that is, Eric, you and I have talked about this before. This pay to play
Yeah.
that for vendors like Datto, amazing. Because say amazing, say amazing. These are all amazing vendors. ScalePad, great. But they to go to market and to get the growth structure that they're looking for, they're spending 200,000, 300,000, 500,000, 2 million, 3 million, like
Yeah.
up and
That
up
Yeah.
from
that's more in
there,
line.
right? Yeah, like I'm trying to be like, there is, you can choose if you have a 50 as a vendor, if you have a $50,000 spend for go to market, you can barely do anything. That's going to
Right.
cover what, like few ASCII events, nothing else. But the way the market is that the MSPs are expecting you to be in front of them. So they're expecting you to spend this much money. But also, I think it's like we were talking about statistics, only 30% of MSPs actually attend events. So where are the rest of these MSPs? There is an argument to be said that, well, maybe some of them aren't going to events because they're 2 users and under, they're a one person MSP shop. That's all the entire thing. But there's got to be a window of MSPs that are kind of in the middle ground. That's where you get like Dan T's got his group, you've got Channel Program, it's got their group. So you have different companies that are going giving them the vendors a space that doesn't cost the 50, 100, $2 million. Let's just go the jump to market to the MSPs and let them know that there are products out there that don't necessarily have the marketing budget to get where they should like
Hmm.
be to talk to them, but they still have a reliable, good product that's solving a problem. Because I don't necessarily believe that you should have to have $1 million or no, I'm going to throw in
Yeah.
a million numbers, $1 million or whatever to be able to solve an MSC's problem.
Well, and I
Yeah.
will tell you that it does take that type of money to
Mhm.
go out and do all of the shows in a year or the majority of the shows in a year just in North America.
Yeah.
That doesn't include trying to do Europe or Australia. And so you're absolutely right. It is, you know, it's a wall that a lot of these smaller vendors especially can't get over. And
Hmm.
so what do they do? And there is this, I almost want to call it old school pay to play because I think we know better. We just haven't changed the industry to match yet. I know
Yet.
because I speak to a lot of people who we all know. I'm not going to mention names. Not that it would be a bad thing because I'm going to say it in a good light, who understand that this industry is different and the normal selling and pitching doesn't work. You
Yeah.
need to bring educational content and you need to show a problem and a solution. And in addition to that, because they're trying to make money at the same time, you need to show how it's profitable.
Yeah.
as well. And so one of the reasons I started all things MSP in the beginning was to kind of get away from this pay to play. Even now, with, if you're a vendor in this space, it's free to join all things MSP and actually get vendor partner benefits, because I didn't want it to be strictly pay to play. So, and I think, one of the reasons I have a panel coming up of people talking about events next year is because events are one of those things where it's a paywall to new
Yeah.
vendors, right? And there are so many new events that are being run differently than the traditional events. I think 2024 is going to be a very interesting year as it pertains to vendors approaching MSPs and how they actually get to connect.
Yeah, I think that and I was gonna shamelessly plug all things MSP, but you did it flawlessly. But there are a couple other players in the space, and I think they're doing a great job in a similar light of that thought leadership side of things. Whether
Yeah.
it be live casts or podcasts or webinars, and not webinars in the sense of like throw up and show up your product. It's a full pitch. It's, hey, there's this problem. Here's how you solve for X, right? And I think it's easier to digest for, what is it, the 70% of MSPs who aren't going to shows, right? They can go,
Right.
okay, there is still value from networking with my peers. And instead of going to, r/MSP, and it's this, how do I put this politely? There's a lot of negativity in there. So I'm going to hold my tongue on that.
The
Just because there,
anonymity does that.
Of course it does, of course, right? But the smaller, easier to digest bits that are like, okay, I'm still solving these problems, and podcasts. I've seen there's someone in the space who does, I think, like 10 to 12 minute podcasts every day,
Mhm.
and they've a
And by
huge
the way, we can
following.
mention those. I mean,
It's Dave
Dave
Sobel. It's
Sobel
Dave
has the
Sobel.
business of tech. Um,
Yeah,
Marvin B, whose live stream is
Marvin
right
B's
after this
great
one
too.
and actually has been in the comments tonight. So,
Yeah.
holla to Uncle Marv. And there's IT Business Owners Group. There's
Oh,
all different places.
yeah,
I,
ITBOG is great.
yep. And there's a million more. There's Everything MSP. There's Amy Luby's group. I fully support all the other groups in here
Totally.
because I don't want to have a situation where I'm just trying to hold on to a specific set of vendors or a specific audience. It's not what I do this for,
No,
right?
I know. I don't want to come on
No,
here
I
and,
know,
and
I
do
know.
like a famous, yeah,
I get it.
I like you, but I think that you're going to see a lot more of that happening. And I'm really curious. So you said 2024 is going to be an interesting year. Now, if we look back at, the first year of COVID, there was a huge adoption on webinars, right? And we have seen that go from, Desraie, you can probably get better numbers on this, but it was a 50% attendance rate. I've heard as low as like dropping significantly
Yep.
down to like 15 now, right? There's webinar fatigue, right? But people are going out to events, getting in person, right? Shaking
Yep.
hands and kissing babies and doing beers in the lobby. Are we going to get event fatigue to the point where, not as vendors, for sure we are, right? If you're saying, hey, it's 70K to come to this event, or at some point there's going to be that's just too much. It's not palatable, right? And is it going to, exactly, is it going to swing the other way? Or is it going to swing and drop into an entirely new genre of, okay, small, easy to digest content that's thought leadership, that's consistent?
I have a personal feeling about this, and that is that what you're going to see is you are going to see that pendulum shift because I don't think it's sustainable, right? And from the event side. And then the other thing that I think you're going to see is you're going to see shorter content that's more easily digestible, exactly like you said. I think Eric Bowles has talked about that a lot. And the other thing that I think you're going to see, you're still going to see long form content. You're going to see stuff like this that we're doing
Yeah.
tonight. What I
Yeah.
think you're going to see, though, is you're going to see production value go up,
Right.
because I think that's where people, if you can get people entertained and have it be visually exciting while you're teaching them something, I think that's going to drive webinar or live stream type attendance up over the next year.
Which is why I'm so surprised that you invited me back.
Say that every day, every day.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
No,
go. So I guess to further what I was saying, and then with what you guys are talking about, the, there's additional conversations happening with the vendors who are recognizing the fact that there is a pendulum here. There's a pendulum of one argument to be made that hotels and all of the places that we do events at are trying to make money
Mm-hmm.
back, so the cost is higher.
mhm.
I would argue that as if they drop their costs, any vendor is going to drop their costs and give it back to the vendor. Like there's it's not going to happen. So
Why
there's always
not?
going to be this there's going to be this cost to the events. And literally every conversation I have with new vendors and even old vendors is they want to figure out a way to get out of this market. I think ScalePad's event was today. I didn't actually watch it, but they were announcing a big thing. And there's another company that was also another North American
Rejection
company
con.
that was offering a new thing. I wasn't out. I don't actually know, so I'm not going to talk to it. But I know from the people that I speak to that there is a focus on how do we do this? How do we fix this? Some of it does go to the let's have more events, but more local, like you have Kaseya has their Kaseya Connects.
Right.
So then you all of a sudden, I know Nerdio is another one that does their Nerdio events, local
And
events.
PAX.
So
PAX is doing their local
yeah,
ones.
perfect. So is that going to be it? Does that open? I don't know. Or is there going to be some sort of middle ground of one of the things that I've been trying to literally talk to everyone about because I'm not going to do it. So if someone does it, it'd be great. But like, why don't we host once a quarter, not paid? I get that money is value and you have to make money. Like, where is there? Let's introduce MSPs to new vendors. Some of that, or the MSPs pay for it. And be like,
Mm-hmm.
introduce 40 new vendors, and it's an online thing. You pay $10, but it covers the cost. But then there's the education piece behind it, where you're like, okay, literally I go back to if there's companies there that are solving problems that the MSPs don't even know exist, there
Mhm.
instantly has to be value in the MSPs learning that these companies exist. And I do think that there's several vendors in the space that are trying to solve that problem.
Yeah. And I think, one of them is Channel Program. And I think Channel Program is doing a good job of bringing vendors and MSPs together in a way that MSPs want, right? And providing them with some of the tools that help them connect to the right vendors. So I think there's a formula that they're, using and they are developing an algorithm, whatever you want to call it, that is doing very well in that space. I think I'm approaching it from a entirely different direction, right? Where I'm trying to put vendors in front of MSPs in a environment where I'm not selling names. One of the reasons why I've kept it kind of a Facebook group thing is I don't have contact information for these MSPs, right? And so there's different ways to do this, and I think it was maybe Henry who said in the comments he did talking about the scarcity piece, right? There's no scarcity in this community or in this space, in my opinion, because
Mhm.
you get new vendors coming up all the time, and I think if we give them the forum to be able to be heard, then people are going to find them, and people are going to find the solutions to the problems that they have. So I think that there's a lot of different things happening, to your point, Des, where people are trying different things and they're getting, different results, and the industry is getting better for those experiments. I was just having a conversation today with somebody where we're going to experiment with a workshop type format here with all things MSP and another, community expert who's going to bring in some educational content. And I think the more and more that we experiment with this stuff, we're going to find the things that work.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a trend that I'm hoping to see develop. I've seen it kind of in the latter half of this year, is the vendors working together to provide more value for MSPs, right? And this is further to Jay McBain's point, right, where he's talking about like MSPs gaining such a huge market share, and now I think it just eclipsed telecom this year. Maybe my numbers are a little bit off, right? But he had a big Venn diagram of like here's the different industries in IT, right? And here's how managed service providers fit into that. And one of the things they're looking for is this open and connected ecosystem, right?
Right.
So for me to go to, a company that Desraie's working with or to another vendor and say, hey, there's overlap in our business. Let's do a joint webinar. And, now we're solving X and Y by doing Z. And there's my Canadian coming out. Right? So this is how we're working together, right? And you work on those integrations to say, because there's definitely vendors in the space that are saying, hey, come to us. We do everything. We do everything. You'd be stupid to go with any other vendors, which I mean, I understand it from a business sense, but it's also concerning from an MSP sense of putting all your eggs in one basket, right? Whereas if you've got, other vendors where because you don't want to necessarily go to 20 different vendors and have to write scripts to piecemeal something together so that it actually works and is cohesive, right? From a billing standpoint and operation standpoint, right? Channel Programs got their partner relationship management portal, which I think is doing a really good job at kind of pulling all that together. But these integrations are tying it all together so that you can have a robust solution for multiple different vendors
Yeah.
without having to do anything on the back end and trying to MSP to P it together, going back in the day where you're like, okay, well, we've got our VoIP solution, we've got our firewalls, now we've got to write different code and we've got to hack it together. And now we've got this thing that's kind of Frankenstein. If something breaks, I don't know where it broke. Right. So I think that open ecosystem is going to go a long way, or that's the trend I've seen developing.
Yeah. And I think one of the great things about that is that the MSPs who want to buy a solution from a vendor, like an entire solution to run their business, that's possible, right? They
Yep.
can do that.
Yep.
But if they're an MSP who wants to do best of breed and put it all together, now the ecosystem has developed to a point where integrations are kind of table stakes, right? You
Yep.
you have to have these integrations in order to be part of this ecosystem successfully.
Totally. Yep.
And so I think it again, it gives people choices to run the business that they want to run. And I think that's key for this industry because again, going back to that kind of small to medium business mindset, people want to work the way they want to work. And people want to run these businesses the way they want to run them. And I think this is one of those rare spaces where you can actually do that.
Yeah. 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 I agree. You can, build your own car, so to speak, right? And
Yes.
customize it how you want it to drive.
Oh, Uncle Marv is leaving us probably
You're
because he's
tapping?
got to start. He's got to get ready for his own live stream. So, one of the things that you guys, if you aren't done with MSP tonight, please check out Uncle Marv's podcast, his live stream. Definitely one of the originals in the space. Lots of great topics over there, and love to give him a shout out every Wednesday night.
Finally found the chat, and then I saw Henry Tim just messaged. And it's funny because I literally was on a podcast yesterday and this exact thing was brought up where Henry said that the future is coming down to division between boutique, small, specialized MSPs versus large Walmart mega MSPs. And I I agree. There is that exact thing. And it is also about like think about if you were a person who wanted to start a business and are interested in technology and you had plug plug and play and it worked and you could start making money and this was all and then maybe you learned about everything else and you switch companies and like whatever, probably going to choose that. Or not everyone because there's different types of people and everyone's different. But when I was in the conversation yesterday, there was a person who commented on AI. They're like, what is the new AI technologies coming around and what problems are they solving that I don't even know about? Well, that's like a massive question you can't even answer as a chat question that comes up. The answer is in literally what I said that there's a bunch of vendors coming into the place with products that you don't even know about because they aren't in the place that you need to talk to them about. But that's neither
Mhm.
here or there. But there is a whole thing around the fact that there's going to be and already is clearly like Kaseya spending a whole bunch of money to buy a baseball, hockey.
Some kind of
Basketball.
stadium.
Basketball.
Basketball,
Miami
yeah.
Heat.
I thought that
Come
was just kidding.
on, man. I have 5 Miami Heat jerseys. Whatever.
Oh, I thought it was Flames, a hockey arena. They just bought a hockey arena in
It's
Miami.
basketball,
So their
man.
hockey arena that they just purchased, because I realize I'm not in camera, that is
Ball.
where a lot of
Easy,
money is
man.
going to. But they also have a huge marketing thing. And if you were starting a new business and said, "Okay, wait, I can just press a button and start making money, I'm going to be in." And that's where even the AI conversations coming from is where people were commenting in this moment of this conversation that I was in, where I would like to see a security focused company buy all the companies and then now have the plug in and play, but now I have security focused instead of the companies that are already doing it that aren't necessarily security focused, but it's because they're all dollar bills focused. And it's like half one and half the other. And
Yeah.
I really think it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
It you could open such a can of worms here because there's arguments for standardizing a stack so that you have consistency, it's easier to manage things. But then there's also the other side of it of like verticalization where you go, okay, I understand line of business. So you're specializing in, let's say, dental, and you understand their software. Like I think that's another hour. That's another. How long do we have? We don't want to run over Marv's stuff. So
That's
how
right. We
long
don't
do we
run
have?
over Marv stuff. I literally cut it off before Marv so that we don't steal from his audience.
Fair.
To enter Dagley's space, apparently there's a common statistic, and I don't know the I can look into it further. You can always shoot me a message, but it's something along the lines of 15% of marketing budget, uh, sorry, 15% of budget is spent on marketing to stay the same, and 25% of budget needs to be spent on marketing to grow.
And
So
that's
think
got to be
about your growth
expendable budget, right?
plan of like what you're planning. 25% of that growth, if you want to grow to this, has to be spent on marketing. So I would just rotate that right back to how many partners do you think these guys are bringing, these any MSP vendor across the board? Like this is, I would say that statistics is like industry channel specific
Mhm.
across the board, but also is pretty much standard across if you have a business and want to grow versus if you have a business and are standard across what you're looking to do.
Right. Right. And you know, I wanted to bring up something, because you mentioned it, you pointed out that Henry talked about the division between the small boutique specialized MSP versus the large Walmart mega at scale MSP.
Mhm.
And I mean, we're definitely seeing this emerge, right? And I think it's a function of a couple of different things that I think are interesting to this space. And that is number one, you will never solve the small business problems by being a mega Walmart MSP.
Yep.
That will never happen because they will always prefer the personal approach. And you simply can't deliver the type of service that they expect as a mega anything, I don't think,
Right. No,
right?
I agree.
You know, the TELUS, what was the name of the MSP, Trevor? Can I remember? Oh,
Fully
he
managed.
wants to say it.
No,
Fully
no,
managed.
no, no,
Okay.
no. I'm just saying
Oh,
that Eric probably wouldn't know because it's a Canadian thing.
so in Canada, TELUS is like a massive
Uh-huh.
telecommunicator. It's like there's three of them really. Oh, you probably know or take. But they just bought Fully Managed, which is one of the bigger MSPs
Yep.
across Canada, and they're rolling it in slowly into TELUS, which I don't know what it'll look like. I have friends that work there. Apparently everything's all good, like everything's wonderful. But the very first time it happened, I looked at the times I called TELUS to get my service and support, and everyone knows no end client is going to be happy with that same support for their MSP services when
Right.
I spent 2, 3 hours on hold with TELUS.
Right.
Like it
Yeah.
just isn't going to come.
Well, and
It's
Degley is commenting they're too big to scale down, and that is exactly the problem. It's scaling down. And the other factor here is as a space matures, you get people who are from other mature industries who have experience selling in those industries that know how to sell up. They know how to scale up. They know how to do larger transactions. What I don't believe they have the history of doing is being able to sell to lots of small customers and
yeah,
scaling down in price or in revenue size per sale, per transaction, and severely ramping up the number of transactions because you have to remove all of the friction to be able to do that, to be able to do it successfully.
Well, and that's further to Henry's point, right? Because now you're just
Yes.
going to go, okay, we sell widgets to people, and would you like this widget? And that's kind of it, right? We've seen it with TELUS, Xerox, Konica Minolta. I mean, there's a laundry list of companies that are, and they're looking at it from the PE standpoint, right?
Right.
Or right, and they're going, well, there's the other PE companies doing it, and I think that the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that are going, you're doing it properly. Here's some money to make it better, and then they're gonna drift they're gonna Homer Simpson into the bush,
Right.
right?
And I think what's really interesting about this dynamic that's happening now with the division, right, is you are going to have vendors who have sales teams in place who are really good at selling to those MSPs that are scaling up, those mega Walmart
Yep.
MSPs. And that's going to further drive that division. You also have kind of these homegrown, born in the cloud SaaS, were made to scale on small transactions types of vendors who are going to push the other direction. And you're going to end up with this much larger gap in the middle that's going to be very interesting over
Yeah,
the next couple of years.
yeah,
Think I think there's a potential it's going to be the same kind of gap as the security gap that's kind of happening now. Like I
yeah,
remember when I first started at Passportal, still having arguments, like, and this wasn't like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, with MSPs about being like, I will never hold anything in the cloud ever. I don't use the cloud at all. And you're
Right.
like,
yeah,
oh, it's gonna go that way. And then even the security, yeah, like there's so many MSPs who security is not there yet until it needs to be there. And I think, yeah, that's going to be the same kind of thing.
Yeah. But that time is coming very, very quickly. Now, I want to say something here because Henry just pointed it out in terms of priority of budgets versus customer experience. How important do you guys think customer experience is to both MSPs and vendors in terms of partner experience on the vendor side? How important do you think that is in 2024?
go for it.
So based on my 50/60 CRO conversations and interviews of the last 3 months, and just based on my experience, I think that is going to be bigger. People, I think I posted this yesterday on LinkedIn or the day before. People don't buy from people, they buy, or people don't buy from companies, they buy from people. There we go. I was
Mhm.
totally gonna say it backwards way. Um, and every one of these interviews I'm doing, and yes, CRO, Chief Revenue Officer, they have like a goal. Their revenue target. They're taking the silos from marketing and sales and breaking them down and being like, what is the revenue target? But the end result of figuring out what the revenue target is, the clients are happy because it's not about the quick sale or the just posing for the dollars. It's about every single part. It's about retention. It's about keeping or retention, keeping the client, same thing, but like getting the client on board, getting them to hit the goals that you need them to hit and helping supporting them to that. And then with sell through, selling them through so they're completely good on the sell through model and then they want to stay on with you. And then meanwhile, they're still happy enough that they're talking about you and they're recommending you to other people. The in a lot of the conversations that I'm having right now, the how to go to market strategy is starting with LinkedIn. It's starting with social. It's starting with building a brand. It's starting with building a personal brand and then a company brand. This is all relationships. It's all
Yes.
built on people first and then product second. I know that I hype on, like I've hyped on several times, that there's so many products out there that the MSPs need to know about that will solve their problems. But when it comes to A and B, there's so much competition. Product A and B, if they're the same, and even if product B is way better, if the relationship with the people at company A is better, people will buy from company A, hands down. I believe that 100%. Probably also because a lot of my brand is built on it. And if not, then I'm failing and my life is over and then I might as well give up.
So, and I will echo all of that sentiment, mainly so our new AI overlords don't overtake the sales roles here. But if we loop back and let's talk about the vendor experience, and events are crazy expensive, like very cost prohibitive. If you look at that and you factor that into your customer acquisition cost, and I know for a lot of MSPs, their customer acquisition cost, unless they're doing solely, grassroots organic handshake referrals, if you're trying to scale, it can be very expensive because you're trying to go out there and say, hey, I do this thing. And unless you have marketing that stands out or you're very niche, you're just trying to go out there and be like, hey, your business is not secure. I'm going to do this thing for you, right? So your customer acquisition cost can be really high. So then it's going to default back to that relationship, right? People buy from people they know, like, and trust, right? The relationships are going to become more and more important. And again, AI overlords, I'm talking to you. Salespeople are still a thing. Don't get rid of us. Anyways,
Are you there, Margaret?
no, Desiree, wrong live cast for that.
All right. Well, and with that, I think we've probably managed to spend an entire hour. Thank you both for being here. So excited that we could have you both on here at the same time. I know it took a little bit. Um, had you both on individually, but it was a lot of fun having you both here. And I really think we talked about some important overarching topics that are going to affect every MSP, every vendor in 2024. So I appreciate your guys' insights. So thank you very much.
Hey, thank you so much for
Always.
having us, and hopefully we weren't pixelated like Justin was last time.
No,
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for always being a big supporter myself. I will always talk about community and always talk about how important it is. And like we started this conversation with, you were the first person who ever put me up for a CompTIA relationship. That has been a definitely help driver in my career path. So thank you so much.
you're welcome. And this is why we all stay here, is
Yeah.
because the culture, the friendships, the environment, just the willingness to help each other has I've never experienced it anywhere else. I mean, granted, I've never really been in a lot of other industries, but I've been tangential to them because of having clients in different industries, right?
Yeah.
So, this it's why I've decided this is where I'm going to stay. I don't know how
100%.
this is going to end up. All Things MSP is going to do a lot of experimenting over the next, probably year to 2 years, and hopefully figure out what it's going to grow up to be.
It will.
So I'll see you in Costa Rica, Trevor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You guys have a great holiday.
Hey,
I'll
we
see you when
will.
you get
Cheers.
Sure.
back.
You bet.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And this conversation went kind of so fast. I didn't get to mention a lot of people in the comments. Darren, Tom, Degley, Henry, JOB Technologies. Don't know who you are, but reach out. Let me know. Love to get to know the people who are watching and engaging in all things MSP. So really appreciate you guys being here. Look for a lot of new stuff coming from All Things MSP over the course of the next couple of months. Now that we have sponsors, we've got two new premier sponsors. We have superops.ai and we have movebot.io. So both of those have now contributed, and we're going to be doing content with them as well as using those resources to bring more and more content, the content that you guys are looking for, to this channel and to this community. So thank you very much. Have a great evening. If I don't see you, have a great holiday. And don't forget, all things MSP, go to the Facebook group and join there, because that's where the bulk of this community interacts. So have a great one.